Hello and welcome, my dear book club members. Some of you have been following and participating in this free and open to all book club since I started it, which was in April, April of 2020. So we're going to be 2 years old, and we have read together and discussed some truly amazing books, and we've had wonderful guests, and we have had cooking demos, and welcome to everybody. If you would like to type where you're joining us from, that's always exciting. One of the books that we read last year was Own Your Health, also by Glen Merzer, and with Chef AJ providing 75 truly delicious, unique recipes. And if you would like to watch this book club, because these book clubs are recorded, you can head to my YouTube channel. It's under my name, Gustavo Tolosa. There is a playlist there that is called Online Book Clubs, and you can find this one, and you can find the other ones as well. And hopefully, if you're new and you're going to watch this, make sure you purchase. This is a book that I consider myself a pretty good expert on whole food, plant-based way of eating in the style of Dr. McDougall's diet, which is a starch-based diet. But this book taught me, I learned something from all books, but this book, it's so well written and easy to read and clear that I really enjoyed it, and I know everybody else did. So this is the beginning of February. I cannot believe that we're already in our second month of the year, and we are currently going to read Food is Climate by Glen Merzer as well. And thank you for writing. That's great to see so many of you logging in. Thank you for being here. And maybe I know some of you, like I said, are familiar with this. If you're new, the way this works is that you purchase the book. So if you haven't purchased it yet, go ahead and purchase it, because you will get so much out of it, out of our discussions and questions you may have and comments, if you are reading the book with us. So today we are planning to cover chapter 1 and 2, or it says part 1 and 2. And I have the best guest I could have, and it is the author himself. So in a few minutes I will introduce him. He'll come on screen here. And so one of the main rules that I have for these online book clubs, besides always purchasing the book that we read and reading it together, every week I assign you a chapter or two. Another kind of rule is that we're all here to learn. We're here to learn from the book. We're here to learn from guests, and we're here to learn from each other, because we're all in different parts of our journey. And I don't consider myself an expert in this area that we're going to talk about this month. So I am very excited, because I always like to listen to as many points of view and as many opinions, as much research as possible. And then I make up my own mind of what I believe. So I hope that you will be here with an open mind. And one of the rules is that we are respectful. So I assume that you will interact, that you will ask questions, you will write comments, but please always keep it respectful. If for some reason, I don't think it's ever happened, But if for some reason there is somebody that writes comments that are out of line or disrespectful, I'll just have to delete you. And I don't want to do that. Very good. So when you purchase this book, I just want to remind you, you can send an email to the author, and the email, I'm going to type it here, and it's food is climate at gmail.com. If you send an email here, let's see if I wrote it correct, foodisclimate at gmail.com, you will receive a PDF with 25 extra recipes. These are really delicious. They're very good recipes. You do have recipes in this book as well, but you will get an extra one. When you send the email, make sure so that Glen knows that you're part of the book club and he will send you this, make sure that you put Gustavo on the subject line. Not because I'm going to get anything extra myself, but so that he knows that that you got the book and that you're part of the book club. Very good. So are we ready to get started, everyone? So I'm going to introduce you to the author, Glen Merzer. And Glen, if you would join us here, I will share the screen with you.
How are you?
Good
to see you, Gustavo. How are you?
Very good, very good. Good, and like I said, excited to feature your book this month and the book club. And tell us, you are in what state are you?
Indiana.
Indiana.
I see there's somebody else here from Indiana.
Oh, yeah, I do. Okay, very good. All right, thank you. I want to say that again, Glen, because I know you're busy and I appreciate that you make the time to be present.
Any time to join the Gustavo Book Club, I'm happy to do it.
Okay. Well, we were both talking earlier about the foreword, which is written by someone we could call a celebrity or a philanthropist, Philip Malcolm Wallen from Australia. And we will actually discuss the foreword in an upcoming session. Okay. So today we will leave it for now, but it is important, and I hope everybody reads it because we will talk about this, and we will announce when. And we will announce who the guests will be as well, because we're planning to have one or two very interesting guests. So, Glen, before we start talking about this, can you just give us an overview of, or just because some people here may not know you, what made you want to write this book, and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, my background is as a writer. When I was a kid, I just wanted to write plays and make people laugh. That was my whole background. And I wrote stage plays that won some awards. A couple went to the Kennedy Center. I was making people laugh. I enjoyed that more than anything in the world. Like you love music, I love the theater, making people laugh. And then the theater world itself was very tough. And at some point I won a prize that sent me to Hollywood, and I wrote sitcoms for 10 years. And when you write sitcoms, it's not as exciting because you're not really making much of a live audience laugh. They've got a laugh track. There is a little bit of a live audience when they film it, but it's not exciting, and it's lower standards than the standards of theater. But all along, I was a vegetarian. I was a vegetarian from the time I was 17 because of heart disease in my family. When I was 17, my two uncles died, two of my mother's brothers. And I never knew my grandparents. They were dead before I was born. And on my father's side, most of the men died in their 50s. So I didn't want to be middle-aged at 25. You know, that just, I didn't want to start feeling that life was so short. So I don't know where I had heard, but I had heard that meat is what causes heart attacks. And indeed it is. And so I gave up meat when I was 17 years old, but I didn't immediately give up cheese because I had an obese aunt and uncle who were very worried about my protein levels. And, you know, I couldn't say to them, but what about you? Aren't you worried about your health? So they asked me what I would eat for protein, and I said cheese. And stupidly, I ate cheese for the next 19 years. And 19 years later, I started to feel some heart pains. I mean, I have lousy genes for heart disease, and I think just the cheese was starting to give me heart disease. So I thought I could either go to a cardiologist, or maybe I should stop eating cheese because I'm not eating meat because of the saturated fat and cholesterol. And what's cheese? Saturated fat and cholesterol. I stopped eating cheese. Never had a pain again. I'm in excellent health. I've never taken any medication in my life, and I'm now a senior citizen. I don't believe it, but I'm 65. No, I just turned 66. I'm 66 years old. And, you know, I feel like I'm in my 20s. I never had kids, Gustavo. So what happens is when you grow older and you never had kids, you don't, you know, if I had a kid and the kid was 30, I would recognize that I'm getting older. But I never had kids, so I feel like I'm 30. I feel like I'm in my 20s. And it's kind of crazy because I'm getting older. But I don't feel it, and I think that's because of my diet. So as to why I wrote about food is climate, I've written now 10 other books about health. Often I was a co-author, like with Chef AJ's books and with Howard Lyman's books, co-author. But I wrote Own Your Health as my book, and with AJ's recipes. And you know what the most important thing to health is, Gustavo? Being able to breathe. And you know, we're facing a situation where we could all go on an excellent diet, but if it's 125 degrees outside, we got a problem. And the climate can kill us. And the climate can destroy all life on Earth, or, you know, certainly destroy human life. So we have to address this climate emergency. It's the most serious problem in the world. And I wanted to take it on and explain that it turns out that the same diet that's best for heart disease, which is the low-fat, whole foods, plant-based diet, which is the best diet for diabetes, and it's the best diet for inflammatory conditions, and it's the best diet for obesity. It's obviously the best diet for the animals, and it's also the best diet for the planet. Because what's heating up the planet is animal agriculture.
I couldn't agree more with your last statement there. The whole food, plant-based, low-fat diet is a cure for a lot of things. Well, Glenn, I would like to read a little, just a couple of sentences here, just going into the book. And if you have the book, everybody watching here, I'm on page 3, and this caught my attention. Obviously, I don't read the whole book because then the sessions would last hours. So I usually choose parts and we discuss that. So what this says at the bottom of page 3, it says the first clue that we needed to change the terms of the debate came in 2006 when the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United States, FAO, published a blockbuster report entitled Livestock's Long Shadow. The report pegged greenhouse gas emissions from animal agriculture at 18% of total global greenhouse gas emissions, more than from all forms of transportation combined. And of course, that alone is shocking. I knew that. That is, I've read it and heard it. But then on page 5, you tell us something that is well, funny. It's not funny, but I mean the way you write it. I have to say I love the way you write because it's has always some humor to it. So you say, what exactly was the strategy that the FAO report suggested for reducing the carbon footprint of animal agriculture? Believe it or not, you can't make this manure up. So I'd like, in your words, to tell us what is this suggested, this suggestion. This is on page 5, where you say precision feeding and improved genetics can greatly reduce emissions of gases. In other words, and so I don't know if you want to say a few words about what you.
Yeah, well, as I say, you can't really make this manure up. This is what the FAO was suggesting: precision feeding and improved genetics can greatly reduce emissions of gases from cows. So they're gonna genetically modify cows. I disappeared there for a moment. They're going to genetically modify cows to save the climate. That's what they're claiming, which is, of course, preposterous. Now there's an outfit called Cargill, a big multinational agricultural outfit. What they're doing is they're putting masks on cows. They're masking cows. This is the level of insanity. In other words, there's a clear solution to the problem. Stop breeding cows. Stop eating cows. That's the solution. And they can't face that solution. So they think, what if we change the genetics of cows? What if we mask the cows? What if we change what the cows are eating? Maybe we can dress them in a ballet costume. They've got all kinds of solutions other than the obvious one. Stop eating cows. We evolved as part of a dynamic and complex system on the earth, along with all other animals and all plant life. And we have a position in that, just like the great apes, our cousins. And the great apes eat essentially a vegan diet, and somewhere between 95 to 100% vegan diet. They eat fruits and leaves, salad, and the occasional termite. But they mainly are eating fruits and leaves. And those are our cousins. Now, we can eat potatoes, and we can eat whole grains, and we can cook. And so we have a wider variety of foods than the chimpanzee, but our genetics didn't change so much in the last 2 million years that our food is cows. That's just crazy. We're not supposed to be eating cows or cow lactation. So because we have stepped outside of our niche, and in a crazy way, with the population explosion, we now have 1.3 billion cows on the earth. Well, there aren't supposed to be 1.3 billion cows on the earth, and they belch methane. So they're not playing their part, their natural role on the earth. There should be, just 5 million, 10 million, 15 million cows, not 1.3 billion. And so there's way too much methane being belched into the atmosphere. And the methane is 120 times as potent a greenhouse gas as carbon dioxide as it's emitted. So that's one of the major reasons why animal agriculture is the leading cause of climate change. But there are many, many reasons, and that's just one.
Right, that's one. Well, Glenn, what you said earlier, it's always been puzzling to me. Just talking about, let's even forget about climate now, but just what you said earlier, heart disease, diabetes, obesity, and a lot of other conditions and illnesses that eating animals, because it's not just eating animals, it's the excess that we have in our present time. It's excessive in every way. But why is it so, why the solution that is so easy, which is stop eating animals, why it's not pursued? Well, I mean, I think you would agree with me. There are huge interests behind this. And also, and I'm going to stop here, I have to say, because I am now living at least part of the time in a country where people are addicted 100% to meat. And so you have the addiction to deal with. Like, I truly think that there will be a social revolution if you told people to stop eating meat. So there's that. And then, of course, there is the financial gains of a huge, huge industry, which later on you also compare it to the tobacco industry and other industries that came before. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I mean, it's, what we need to have is a vegan transformation of the planet. We need to have, as many people as possible, ideally everybody, go vegan.
Right.
And of course, I know you've talked on other shows about how, in terms of health, vegan just means what you're not eating. So you could be on an unhealthy vegan diet and have beer and pretzels. So we want a healthy vegan diet, a low-fat, whole foods vegan diet. But in terms of the climate, the most important thing is the word vegan. Because in terms of the climate, what we have to do is end animal agriculture. Now, we want to be healthy vegans and eat a low-fat, whole foods vegan diet, also for the climate, because if we're healthy, we're going to help convince other people to go vegan. So, I don't want to just tell people to go have vegan donuts.
Right.
I want people to eat healthy vegan food. And also because when you eat healthy vegan food, you kind of begin to understand your role in the web of life. This is how we should be eating as human beings. We're designed for fruit. We're designed for vegetables. We're designed for grains. We're designed for legumes. We're not designed for meat, and we're not really designed for donuts either. Mm-hmm. So we need to eat a whole foods, low-fat, vegan or plant-based diet. And what we're up against is culture. We're not up against science, because there is no science that makes any case for eating animal foods. There's no benefit, period, to any animal foods.
Exactly.
There's none.
No.
There's some degree of confusion about that. People think nutrition is controversial. It isn't, because the science is all on one side. It's just that there are people who write books to try to make money, and they claim that the caveman diet is a good diet or something. Right. But it's nonsense.
Well, it's the best way to keep people, like many times of doing webinars with Dr. McDougall, we've talked about this. The best way to keep people, buying or eating these other products is to have confusion. So that you, at one point, you just go, well, nobody knows anything. I'll just do. It's a good strategy, I have to say.
It is a good strategy, but we have to be smarter than that. All the evidence is on one side in terms of nutrition, and in terms of the climate, there's no legitimate scientific debate about whether the Earth is heating up. We know it's heating up.
just by living. I mean, I live in a place now that used to be a lot colder, and now it's not. So it's really, it doesn't take um, that much. But Glenn, I do want to point out something on page 6 here, where you mentioned the World Watch report and how that report, when you make a comparison of that report with the FAO report, and you say that the assessment in this new World Watch report came to at least 51% of the greenhouse gases to be attributed to animal agriculture. That is a big difference from the previous report.
Right.
What did they do? What did they leave out, or what did they add in this report? Can you tell us a little bit about
Sure.
that? I mean, you do tell us in the book, but I like you to say it in your words.
Right. Well, okay, so we start with the FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, that said 18% of greenhouse gases are animal agriculture. Now, you have to realize who the FAO is. They're like, in the United States, we have the Department of Agriculture. The Department of Agriculture works with farmers. That's who their clients are, the farmers. That's why when the Department of Agriculture comes up with the food pyramid, it always involves meat and dairy, because their clients are the animal agriculture interests. So the FAO works with animal agriculture interests all over the world. So when they said that 18% of greenhouse gases comes from animal agriculture, it was a little shocking, because they were kind of blaming the people they work with. And a lot of those people got angry. Yes. And contacted the FAO, and next thing you knew, about 5 years later, they said, "Oh, did we say 18%? We meant to say 14.5%." So they lowered it a little bit. But the World Watch Institute did a more honest accounting, and in 2009, they came up with at least 51%. So what did they do differently? First of all, they accounted for methane more honestly. Methane, when it initially goes into the atmosphere, methane is what cows are belching and sheep are belching all the time. When it goes into the atmosphere, it's 120 times as potent as carbon dioxide. But over time, after about 10 years, much of it degrades into carbon dioxide. So in the atmosphere, it oxidizes and degrades. So the question is, should you count it as 120? Or should you lower that because some of it goes away? I say you should count it as 120, because when it goes into the atmosphere and it's heating the atmosphere, it has all kinds of effects. The heat dries out the earth. When the earth dries out, you get forest fires. The forest fires put more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So that immediate effect counts. But the FAO says, well, let's average it out over 100 years. So they use a multiplier of 20 for methane, whereas I would say you should use 120 compared to carbon dioxide. Well, the World Watch report used a multiplier of, I think, 76. So they said that methane is 76 times as bad as carbon dioxide. So that was one fact. Another factor was the World Watch Institute accounted to an extent for what we called carbon opportunity costs. That means if you didn't have grazing land for cattle and you had forest on that land, all those trees would be sucking up carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. All that vegetation would be sucking up carbon dioxide. So the FAO didn't account for that, and the World Watch report did. The other thing is the World Watch report accounted for animal respiration. We have 25 billion animals that are exhaling carbon dioxide with every breath. Now, the FAO takes the attitude, oh, you can't count that because that's part of the natural carbon cycle. And what they mean by that is, well, we have trees that because of photosynthesis take in carbon dioxide and emit oxygen. And we have animals and people who take in oxygen and emit carbon dioxide. It's all part of one cycle. The trouble with that argument is, the Earth in its pristine state originally, you could say that. But we've cut down half of the trees on Earth. We have 3 trillion trees instead of 6 trillion trees. And we now have 25 billion farmed animals. So when we get to the point where we have 100 billion farmed animals and we just have 1 tree left, will they say it's all part of the natural carbon cycle? I mean, we've adjusted. There is no more natural carbon cycle. It is an out of balance carbon cycle with too many animals and too few trees. So it's not in balance. So the World Watch Institute counted, as they should, animal respiration. And they came up with 51%, at least 51%. But then Dr. Silas Rao, in a paper I think it was 2019, and he is an engineer, a systems analyst. He computed that greenhouse gases from animal agriculture are at least 87% of the problem. So what did he do differently? Well, he did a more robust accounting of carbon opportunity costs, because he went back to look at what percentage of the grazing land was forest in the year 1800. And the answer was 41%. So he said, what if we could restore 41% of the grazing land on Earth? And that's a lot of land, because we're wasting a lot of the earth on grazing. If you take 41% of it and you restore it to forest, what happens? And the answer is you pull down enough carbon dioxide to solve the problem. The grazing land is the biggest key to solving the problem. Now, there's one other big key to solving the problem, and that is the oceans. I encourage all your viewers and listeners to watch the movie Seaspiracy. In Seaspiracy, you see what the fishing industry is doing to the oceans. And remember, the oceans contain phytoplankton that do the same thing the trees do. They emit oxygen, they take in carbon dioxide. We need healthy phytoplankton populations in the ocean. We need healthy sea forests. We need healthy populations of fish in the ocean. And we need to restore the oceans. If the oceans are dead, we're dead. When they say save the whales, it means save humanity, because without the whales, we got a big problem. So it's all part of a complex web of life that we shouldn't be messing with.
Yes. That was something that really just shocked me and opened my mind, because we're not aware at all about how this wonderful ecosystem, this earth, works. Everything is linked and interconnected. And Glenn, I think this page 22 at the bottom, you explained this in such a beautiful way that I highlighted and I read it 2 or 3 times, because you talk about, this is at the bottom of the page, the phytoplankton produce dimethyl sulfide, which rises in the atmosphere, you say, and then that adheres to water droplets, and that produces clouds. And then the clouds in turn reflect light and help cool the planet. And so the feces of whales indirectly help create clouds and regulate the climate, because of what you described earlier. It is doubtful that anyone with a harpoon over it ever gave that a thought. And so you say save the whales, therefore means save ourselves. And it's very powerful. Just that little bit. I mean, we're not even talking about other connections.
Right. So you have whale feces that fertilize the phytoplankton. Right. Phytoplankton emit dimethyl sulfide, rises in the atmosphere, adheres to water droplets, seeds clouds, the clouds cool the earth. I mean, this is a great system. It's how this evolved over millions of years. It's fabulous. And then we kill the cows for blubber. Kill the whales for blubber, and we mess the whole thing up. Don't mess it up. Leave the animals alone. By the way, we're suffering from a pandemic now, as you may have heard, that has cost so many millions of lives, disrupted economies all over the world. And why did it happen? Because we didn't leave the animals alone. There are two theories about how the pandemic started. One is in a wet market in China with the bats. And the other theory is that the bats were taken into a laboratory and it came out of a lab. Either way, leave the bats in the cave, we're good. Just leave the bats in the cave. Well, leave the whales in the ocean. Leave the fish in the ocean. Eat beans and rice and corn and human food, and we're good. That's the solution.
Anytime that a large amount of animals is
crowded together,
we
get disease.
That is simple to understand, and that is becoming more and more. So of course, it's no surprise. But I do want you to say something about Glenn, because on page 18 you talk about. I think that's the page. I think it's 17 and 18, where you talk about the cover of the book.
Yeah.
The map.
Yeah, that is a NASA fire map of just one day, all the fires around the world, and you see them there in South America, which is probably one of your favorite continents. Yeah. And those are fires set by people who raise animals for food. Those are pasture maintenance fires. So when, ranchers have cattle on their land, and every year, whatever the cattle don't eat, they burn. Now, nobody is measuring this. So when even my friend Silas Rao says at least 87% of greenhouse gases are from animal agriculture, he's not including pasture maintenance fires, which are putting carbon into the atmosphere, because nobody's measuring it. How do we know how much carbon goes into the atmosphere from those fires? That's a picture of one day.
That's 1 day.
That's 1 day of fires.
Yeah.
So, and we know what they're doing to the Amazon. Now, I also, Gustavo, if also you'd show that again and show the desert.
Yes, I do. I do want you to
look at we've got the Sahara Desert at the top third of Africa, going to the deserts of the Middle East, going to the far desert.
It wasn't always a desert.
It wasn't always a desert. I assumed it was growing up. I said, no, there was always the Sahara Desert. But no, we know for a fact that something like 8,000 years ago, that was lush. Some mixture of forest and savanna. We have cave paintings in the area where there were giraffes there. Mm-hmm. And rhinoceri, so and in the cave pictures are pictures also of humans engaging in animal husbandry. Well, that was the problem, because what turned the Sahara into desert was more than one factor. One factor was a wobble in the Earth's axis, so more sunlight hit it directly. But another factor was, well, what happened in the last 10,000 years? Humans invented agriculture. And they invented animal husbandry. And they started chopping down trees and grazing land with their animals. And that accelerated maybe by a wobble in the Earth's axis. But that's what's responsible for those deserts. Now, if we keep doing what we're doing in the Amazon, we're chopping down trees, and we're putting cattle on the land, also growing soybeans for cattle in what used to be lush tropical rainforest, then 50 years from now, we're going to be talking about the Amazonian desert.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And if you could imagine an Earth with desert all around it, California desert, the Amazon desert, and the Sahara, we're not going to be able to feed ourselves. We're not going to be able to live. So we can't create more deserts. We made that mistake in the Sahara over 10,000 years. We're capable of doing it even more quickly now.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to stop it. And the only way to stop it is a global transformation to the vegan diet.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, Glenn, this has been a fascinating time, 45 minutes with you. And we've pretty much did. We covered part 1 and 2. And I don't know if there's anything else that I would like for you to mention is the story that you tell us about Mr. Packard.
Yes. There's a fellow named Michael Packard who was a lobsterman in Cape Cod.
Uh-huh.
And people eat lobsters. They never imagine they might be killing whales by eating lobsters. But in fact, the lobstermen set traps at the bottom of the ocean, and the traps go up with ropes to buoys on the top of the ocean, and those ropes sometimes trap whales. In the New England area, there are whales called the right whales, and the population is down to 400, and scientists have determined that many of those have had encounters with these ropes, and many of them have been trapped, and some of them have been killed. So Mr. Packard was diving one day as a lobsterman just last June, and he was swallowed whole by a humpback whale.
That sounds like the Bible story.
It is a story of great importance to humanity. Wow. I say that Mr. Packard was chosen to send us a message.
Yes.
And so the humpback whale swallowed him whole. A friend witnessed it and said that after a little bit of time, when Mr. Packard was in the whale long enough to reflect, he was ejected from the whale and he came out flippers first and unharmed. And I believe that whale was sending us a message. A message of compassion. We'll give you one more chance. Now stop with the lobsters. Stop killing the animals in the ocean. Take your place on Earth, eating the foods you were meant to eat, and we can all survive. So the question I ask in the book, and I end that chapter with, is, did Mr. Packard learn anything from the experience?
Yeah.
And I don't know the man, so I don't know if he did.
I don't either. So, but that, I can't think of a better way to end today's session than with that story, because it is a beautiful story of compassion. Like you said, the whale could have swallowed him and eaten it. And it's like, here is a message. I'll give you a chance. Give us a chance.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'd like to, if I can, Gustavo, send a message to you, all your listeners, which is this. You can all make a difference. First, of course, by adopting a healthy vegan diet. That's the most important thing. Secondly, by trying to persuade your friends to do the same. And set a good example by eating a healthy diet so people will want to eat the way you eat and not go to the doctor and so forth. But also, we need to spread this message on climate. And I'm sure we'll talk more next time about how we're not getting the right message from Al Gore and from so many other climate leaders who are just talking about fossil fuels. Fossil fuels is a small part of the problem. The biggest part of the problem is animal agriculture. And so we need to get this message out, and I need your followers, Gustavo, to help me get the message out. First, learn the message of the book by purchasing the book. It's only $10 for the paperback and $5 for the Kindle. It's nothing. And there's also 65 recipes in there. So you certainly get your money's worth. And it's only, the text itself is only 59 pages, plus the forward by Philip Wolin. So there, you can read it in 2 or 3 hours. It's not a long, boring book of science.
Not at all.
But then help me get the message out by then asking your friends to read it, and by challenging. If you ever get the chance to challenge your elected representatives about the real cause of climate change, or if you know somebody in the media, challenge them, because the real cause of climate change is not being discussed, and we have to get the word out what the real cause of climate change is.
Well, another way to help, you mentioned 2, I believe, or 3. Another way is for people to, later on when I post this, share this this session that we've had today with your family, friends, put it on your social media. Social media nowadays is a very powerful tool. So let's go for it and what we can. Yes. Well, Glenn, thank you, and I hope that you will join us next week as well.
Of course, Gustavo.
Okay. And we might have a special guest, which if we do, I will announce it in an email, and we will see you all next week. Make sure that as you read the book, you write questions, and next week bring your questions. We can interact and answer those questions for you. Very good.
Thank you, Gustavo.
Have a good
Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Okay. Bye.